Alright guys, so the event that just happened in Fortnite was crazy. It was so much fun and so much happened that we have to go through and try and explain here. Because, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. You may have known that there was like this butterfly thing, this other world that you got teleported to. And then of course we have a ton of new changes to the map and some other interesting things. There was just so much going on, so let's try and explain it here, going through all of the clues that we have and then go through a bunch of theories and guesses of what I think is going on here. And also I'll go through my view of the event quick in case you missed it, or if you want to get a different view and see if it was different from your view. So yeah guys, if you enjoyed today's video or are just hyped for this entire event that just happened, be sure to hit that like button down below. On top of that, be sure to comment, were you able to make it into the event and witness it? What was your favorite part about it? Leave those comments down below. But yeah guys, let's go ahead and get into it. And actually, before we get into like the different clues and the theories that I have about what exactly happened, let's first go through the overview of what exactly happened, like the event itself. I was able to get in game and get a pretty good view of everything that went on. So let's go through like the summary of things that happened, and then we'll go through them in more detail and try to figure out what everything means. But yeah guys, so first of all, you hop into game and things are pretty much normal. Obviously we knew that the cube was cracking a bit. Yesterday it dropped something like into Leaky Lake, like into the little vortex, and then it seemed to, you know, be changing up until the event itself started to happen. Now once the event happened, the cube started to spin and like charge up and do a lot of stuff, and then when it finally charged up, everything went to a white screen and all of the players in the lobby got teleported to this other like dimension, this other world. And this is very important, we'll try to explain more of this. But yeah, just notice like all of the crazy things that are going on, and again we'll go into more detail about the individual things. But then after that, this like butterfly thing started to appear, and then your character like went to touch the butterfly and then things teleported back, and then we got this new version of Leaky Lake. Now with that being said, there's a few things to go through with this brand new Leaky Lake as well, and what it may mean. So yeah guys, that is the quick overview of the event itself in case you missed it. But let's go ahead and jump into it here with the first thing I want to talk about. And again, these are some clues and theories, and since some of them are theories, they're not confirmed, but it is fun to try and figure out what is going on. So the thing I want to talk about is that other world or dimension that you got teleported to during the event. Like, there's a lot of things going on there that we need to try and dissect. But before we get into that, something that builds up to this is what happened before the event even started. Obviously, you guys know that the cube was going around like seemingly charging up from different things. Like, it even had those mini islands come to charge it up at one point. The corrupted zone seemed to have an effect on it and stuff like that. But what I found very interesting that you may or may not have noticed is that yesterday the cube started to like drain that energy into Leaky Lake. Like, here's a little video from yesterday that I recorded in case things changed a bit with the cube, and they did. As you can notice, it's like pretty much fully glowing except for the top little piece. Now then, when you compare it to today, right before when the event happened, you can see that it was indeed seemingly draining that energy down into Leaky Lake itself. So that is a big clue. That definitely means something, and we'll have to sort of circle around back to that in a little bit here. But again, it did sort of drain that stuff down into the lake, and then when it was done draining, that's when the event started and led us to our first little piece of the event, which was the cube like spinning up and stuff like that. Now as for sort of like half a clue maybe, I still want to mention that the cube actually, it didn't turn like purple or anything when it actually like teleported everybody away. Or I mean, it charged up a little bit purple, but mostly it charged up in like a different way, almost like more silver, which I can't quite remember if it's ever done that before. So leave your comments down below if you remember it doing that. I don't know if it's a huge deal, but it might have something to do with like the other dimension or other world, and that sort of silverish and also the different way it charged up maybe means something along the way. So yeah, I did just want to note that, but let's real quick move into something here that has to do with the other dimension, or in other words, the other world. So first of all, when you get teleported here, like what exactly is this place? Again, I do think it's like a separate dimension or world. I mean, this isn't anything you would see on Earth or anything like that. So I mean, it's got to be something like a separate dimension. But just take a look at the design of everything. I mean, you've got these pipe type things moving forward, you've got these glowing circles in the air, and everybody's floating. Obviously you don't float on Earth, so this has to be some sort of separate dimension. Again, so that is an important thing to take note of. However, with this, what I find kind of interesting is that the design of this area sort of seems similar to the vortex that appeared in Leaky Lake. Obviously in this other dimension you have that sort of similar hole in the center, and then Leaky Lake you had the vortex in the center. So it does seem oddly similar. Maybe that's just a coincidence, but if it isn't a coincidence, maybe this is an alternate dimension of the Fortnite world itself. So this is technically like Leaky Lake, I guess. Again, that's just a possibility, but it would make sense for some other things that this is sort of like a utopia where everything is absolutely perfect. And that sort of leads me into my next point here, which is one of the biggest clues we had from this event, and that is the butterfly. That is right, guys. This butterfly was crazy, and it just has to have a meaning here. Now, I think that meaning could be a couple of different things, but the first thing I want to talk about with this butterfly, the first clue, is that it's very clearly a rift type butterfly, if you know what I mean. Like, the design is very similar, reminiscent of the rifts. In fact, I'd say they're really close together. And guys, obviously, what does that mean? What are the rifts known for? They're known for, first of all, teleporting things. That's an important thing to take note of. And when like your character touches the butterfly, they teleport back to the world. So that's like one connection between our world and this little butterfly rift. But the other thing, which I think is even more important, is that the rifts in the Fortnite world seem to teleport things between dimensions or timelines. And I'm thinking this is more dimension based, simply because that's sort of what we've seen from rifts in the past. Ever since the start of season 5, we had the rifts teleport a bunch of different things to the Fortnite map that we know, like the Paradise Palms area, that whole entire desert, Lazy Links, and also, if you remember, a rift teleported drift from the real world, like our world, into the Fortnite world, which definitely is technically a separate dimension or world, whatever you want to call it. And on top of that, you even had the season 5 motto, which was Worlds Collide. But it just seems to make sense here. On top of that, if you want more proof of that, we also had the enforcers get teleported through a rift, and it did seem like they were not from our world. Like, the description of the enforcers was balance and order must be restored, so it seemed like their job was to put things back the way they were, and we still don't know exactly what they did, so that themselves is still a mystery. But again, they were teleported through a rift, so it seemed like they came from a different world, judging just by how they seemed. So yeah, if this does confirm the interdimension type thing, what exactly does that mean? What does that have to do with the new version of Leaky Lake and stuff like that? Well, you know what? Good point. Let's go ahead and jump into some of that stuff. The brand new version of Leaky Lake. There's a ton to talk about here, so let's go ahead and jump right into it with the first thing I noticed about this, and that was what happened right after like everybody's characters got teleported back into the Fortnite world. If you were listening, you heard this sound, which was like this beautiful type sound that is usually known for, like, I don't know if I can really explain it any better than that, but do you guys know what I mean? It's some sort of like utopia sound, and you know what? Let me play that sound for you right here. But yeah, it's like this very beautiful sound, which is a stark contrast to like the darkness that we've had from the cube and Fortnitemares and stuff like that. So that is a very important thing to take note of, because on top of that, you also have this whole entire area, which is very opposite of how it was like earlier today. When the cube was floating things around, it looked very dark. When you shot the cube, it would even do damage to players. And also we had like the cube monsters all around the map trying to attack us. It was a very dark world. But as soon as everything got teleported back here, it suddenly turned to all of this beautiful stuff. And that is obviously my next clue here. I mean, you take a look at Leaky Lake as it is now, and things are just, you know, sort of beautiful. There's a ton of bright grass. There's a ton of flowers. It's sunny, you know, when the sun's out. I mean, obviously. But it just seems very happy. On top of that, you also have the rainbow above Leaky Lake. I mean, what could be more happy than a rainbow? And it's such a beautiful looking rainbow. But yeah, so first of all, you have that like utopia beautiful sound, you have the flowers all around, you have the happy looking waterfalls, and you have the rainbow, which is a direct contrast to earlier today when it was mostly dark, foggy. The cube was very menacing. We had these cube monsters everywhere. That is a huge change. So this leads me to my next point here, and sort of my big theory. Could it be possible that the cube was actually trying to help us the entire time? And I know that might not make sense, but in other words, could the cube possibly have been trying to absorb a bunch of the darkness in the Fortnite world and try to send it away so that the Fortnite world could be made more beautiful and more like perfect, so to say, more friendly, stuff like that? Because why else would the cube do all of this? I mean, it went around the map for quite a long time, and it seemed like it was instead trying to destroy the world. Obviously, we had the corrupted zones, and the corrupted zones are still around. I made sure to check that. We also have the shadow stones, so maybe there is still like a little bit of darkness left over from that. But getting back to my point, yeah, the cube went around, and it seemed to be be charging up. But what if instead of charging up, it was actually absorbing darkness? And when we thought it might be absorbing darkness to destroy the world, instead it was actually trying to absorb it to maybe save the Fortnite world. And that leads me back to my other point where it seemed to like drain the darkness into the vortex of Leaky Lake. So it was like it absorbed everything and suddenly put it all away. So maybe then on top of that, it was teleporting that stuff to the other more perfect dimension where it could be handled and dealt with. And overall, it took it away from the Fortnite world. So again, it could be a more beautiful Fortnite world. So yeah, that is my overall guess and theory. And again, it is just a theory. It's not confirmed, but it's fun to try and figure out exactly what is going on here. And there's actually this other pretty important thing that I want to talk about here. But first of all, I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on that. What do you think exactly is going on? Do you think that's the most likely theory? We'll probably be seeing more when Hunting Party is released later this week. But I am curious to see what you guys have to say. On top of that, there's also this other thing I want to point out real quick. And big thanks to Nosies on Reddit for pointing this out. But I have really no idea what this could possibly mean. But it's very, very interesting. So basically what I'm talking about here, it's this little secret mini cube. That's right, there's actually a mini cube somewhere else on the map, and it's actually at the old superhero's mansion, the one that is now pretty much destroyed. If you go over to that mansion and then go into the basement again where the other superhero stuff used to be, you'll find this chair in the center of the room. Now, if you take a look under the chair, you'll notice this floating mini cube under there, and that itself is something that is very interesting. Now, it doesn't seem like the big overall cube that we just talked about a ton, because this one is more gray where that one's more obviously purple. But it is interesting that, first of all, it's floating, and second of all, what is it even doing here? And third of all, why is it so small? What exactly does this thing mean? So again, I really don't know what this means. If you guys have ideas, leave them down below.